I never planned on being the guy who would get into a confrontation at a corporate party. Hell, I never thought I'd even need to. You see, I've always been the silent partner. The type of guy who doesn't need to be the center of attention, who's perfectly content standing in the background while his wife shines. Odessa was always the life of the party. She's the one who makes a room light up, effortlessly. You could say I'm the quiet, unassuming type. The kind of guy who looks unremarkable at first glance, but knows exactly what's going on beneath the surface. It wasn't that I didn't enjoy the fancy gatherings. After all, there's good food, good drinks, and I like seeing Odessa in her element. But tonight was different. The event was at a lavish downtown hotel. One of those places where the chandeliers are so bright that you can barely look up without being blinded by the brilliance. I wasn't used to places like this, the kind of environment where everyone's dressed to the nines, speaking in corporate jargon, and acting like everything they say is some kind of power move. It felt foreign to me. But Odessa? She owned it. It wasn't until I spotted Caleb that my unease shifted from mild discomfort to something else entirely. It started innocently enough. Caleb, one of Odessa's colleagues, had always been around. But tonight, he seemed different. His energy was off. At least, that's what I thought at first. The way he was hanging around her. His laughter a little too loud. A little too eager when she said something. That wasn't the usual Caleb. He was always a professional. The guy you could count on to be polite, respectful. But tonight, there was something darker behind his eyes. I tried not to pay attention to it at first. I knew that I was just being paranoid. Odessa was a social butterfly, always surrounded by people who loved her. People admired her for more than just her looks. She had a brilliant mind, sharp, intuitive, and confident in ways I could never be. I didn't mind sharing her attention with a few people at these events. I trusted her. But something about Caleb's approach was different. It wasn't just friendly banter. No, it was subtle but deliberate. I could see the way his gaze lingered just a bit too long when she laughed, the way he always seemed to find an excuse to be near her. He wasn't trying to be friendly anymore. He was trying to stake a claim. Odessa didn't see it. Or maybe she did, but she wasn't worried. She trusted people. I mean, how could she not? She was so incredibly charismatic. One of those people who could make anyone feel like the most important person in the room. That was her gift, and that was what made me proud of her. But tonight, I felt like an outsider in my own marriage. I was standing at the bar, nursing a drink, trying to shake off the feeling that had taken root in my gut. It was then that I saw him again. Caleb, standing just a few feet away from Odessa, his body positioned so that she couldn't escape without passing him. He had his hand on the back of her chair, leaning in a little too close as he spoke to her. I saw her smile. A warm, genuine smile. The kind she reserved for the people she felt comfortable with. But Caleb's posture, it was predatory. He wasn't just talking to her anymore. He was positioning himself, inch by inch, to get closer. I looked away, pretending to be absorbed in my conversation with someone else, but my mind was racing. The more I thought about it, the more the anger began to swell inside me. There were unspoken rules, and I knew what they were. No one touches my wife. No one should be so bold, so brazen. But what could I do? What was I supposed to do in a place like this? But that's when the moment happened. The turning point, the instant when everything changed. I had gotten up to grab another drink when I noticed Caleb and Odessa near the corner of the room. He was standing much too close, his hand now resting on her lower back as she turned toward him to listen to something. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the look on her face, genuine interest, a little too much for comfort, told me everything I needed to know. I don't know what got into me. It was as though some part of me had finally snapped. Without thinking, I walked over to them. My breath was heavy, my steps quick, and I don't think either of them saw me coming until I was almost right there. "Is everything all right here?" I asked, the words coming out colder than I meant them to. I was trying to sound casual, but I could hear the edge in my voice. Odessa turned to me, her face lighting up as she always did when she saw me, but there was confusion in her eyes. She hadn't noticed anything off. Not yet. "Yeah, everything's fine," she said, smiling up at me. Caleb was just telling me about a project they're working on. Caleb, on the other hand, didn't smile. He straightened up, his hand lingering for a second too long on Odessa's back before pulling it away. "Of course," he said, his tone oddly neutral. "Just some work stuff." I stared at him for a moment, feeling the air between us tense. His eyes narrowed slightly as if sizing me up. And then, something shifted in his expression. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that I wasn't just some guy standing by the bar. I wasn't someone he could casually push around. I could see the gears turning in his head. This wasn't a social interaction anymore. This was a warning. And that's when I knew. This was no longer about work or friendship. Caleb had made a move. But now, he had learned exactly who he was dealing with. Odessa's smile was still plastered on her face when she turned to me, but I could see it. That tiny flicker in her eyes. A glimmer of surprise. Maybe even a hint of guilt. It was almost imperceptible, but it was there. Caleb seemed to notice it too. He shifted uncomfortably, his casual composure cracking just for a second. It was subtle, but it told me everything I needed to know. For a brief moment, I could feel the temperature drop. I don't know how to describe it, but it was like something in the air changed, like the whole room started closing in on us. People continued to laugh and chatter around us, but it felt like we were in our own little world, with only Caleb, Odessa, and me in the center. So, I began, trying to mask the growing tension in my voice. What's the project you're working on? I didn't care about the project. I didn't even want to know. But I needed a reason to keep the conversation going, to keep myself from doing something I might regret later. Caleb paused, glancing at Odessa for a moment before replying. Just a few new ideas for the company, he said. His voice was smooth, calculated. You know how it is, lots of brainstorming, lots of pitching. Odessa nodded, looking a little too eager to get back into the conversation with him. That smile of hers, it was like she was so used to being the center of attention, the natural leader, that she didn't even see how Caleb was trying to shift the dynamics. I wanted to scream, to tell her to pay attention to what was happening right in front of her. But I didn't. I had to hold it together. I couldn't let him win. I couldn't let him think he had the upper hand. I looked at Caleb again. This time, I didn't try to hide it. My eyes locked onto his, challenging him, daring him to say something more. He looked at me, and for the briefest moment, something in his gaze flickered, an emotion I couldn't quite decipher, but it wasn't the confident smirk he usually wore. He could see it. I wasn't the fool he thought I was. This wasn't just about work. This wasn't just about a casual conversation. He was testing me, pushing boundaries. And I realized, just then, that this wasn't about business. This wasn't about friendship. This was something else. This was a game of power, and I was done playing by his rules. The tension hung thick in the air, like a storm waiting to break. Odessa, blissfully unaware of the silent war happening just inches away, continued to smile at Caleb, engaging in casual conversation. I stood there, trying to hold my ground, trying to not let the anger boiling inside me get the best of me. But it was hard. Watching him be so comfortable around her, watching him manipulate every word, every glance, was almost too much. I was trying to hold it together, to not make a scene, but it felt like every second that passed, Caleb was marking territory. His hand brushed against Odessa's arm as he laughed at something she said, his fingers lingering just a second too long. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away. She didn't see it. But I did. And it was at that moment, when the last bit of my patience snapped, that I made my move. Odessa, I'm going to grab another drink. You want something? I asked, forcing a calmness I didn't feel. She turned to me with that familiar smile, her eyes soft and affectionate. Sure, grab me a glass of wine, please. I'll be right here. I nodded, my eyes briefly flicking to Caleb. I didn't say anything, but in that moment, something passed between us, a silent challenge, a silent understanding. It was as if he knew, as if he could sense the shift in the air. I wasn't backing down. I made my way to the bar, trying to shake off the growing sense of anger, but it clung to me, building like a storm cloud. I didn't want to be the jealous husband. I didn't want to seem insecure or controlling. But Caleb wasn't just a coworker. He was someone who had crossed a line, one that I didn't know existed until now. As I returned with the drinks, I saw them still talking. But this time, it was different. Caleb had his hand on the small of Odessa's back, his body leaning in close, his face a little too close to hers. Her body was angled slightly toward him, and I couldn't ignore the way her eyes were locked with his, that hint of something deeper than casual conversation. For a moment, I stood frozen, watching the scene unfold before me. I had seen Odessa interact with plenty of people, but never like this. Not with a man who was clearly trying to get something more from her. And I didn't know whether it was the way he was looking at her, the way he was touching her, or the way she was responding to him. But something inside me snapped. I walked up to them, my footsteps steady, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to do this. I couldn't let this slide. Not anymore. Everything okay here? I asked, my voice coming out colder than I intended. Odessa turned to me, her face softening. Oh, hey. Caleb was just telling me about a new project. It sounds exciting. Caleb looked at me for a long second, his smile a little too practiced. Yeah, just some company stuff. You know how it is, he said, brushing off the tension with a wave of his hand. But I could tell he was rattled. His calm, collected facade cracked for just a second, and I could see the flicker of something. Maybe regret, maybe realization that he'd pushed too far. I wasn't just some bystander in his game anymore. I stood my ground. Odessa, I'll take you up on that drink. We should go for a walk, get some air. Her eyes flickered, and for just a split second, I saw hesitation. She was trying to figure out if I was overreacting or if something was actually wrong. And I knew deep down that she hadn't seen what I had. She hadn't noticed the way Caleb had been circling her like a predator, waiting for an opening. But now she had to. Now, it was all laid bare. And I wasn't going to back down. As I led her away from the conversation, I glanced back at Caleb. His eyes followed us, a storm of emotions in his gaze. The game had shifted, and whatever his next move was, I wasn't going to let him win. As I guided Odessa away from Caleb, I could feel her body tense beside me. I didn't say anything at first. I couldn't. My mind was racing, the frustration, the anger, all bubbling up to the surface. But I knew I had to keep calm, at least for now. If I showed her how much this was bothering me, I risked looking like I was overreacting. I wasn't sure if I was ready for that yet. We found a quiet corner near the large windows, the city lights casting a dim glow on everything. Odessa took a sip of her wine, her eyes darting around as if trying to figure out what had just happened. What's going on with you, James? You've been distant all night. Her voice was soft, but there was an edge to it. I could feel her confusion, maybe even a little irritation. She didn't get it. How could she? She didn't see the things I saw, the way Caleb had been circling her, that look in his eyes when he thought I wasn't watching. I'm fine, I said, forcing a smile, though it felt as fake as it sounded. Just tired. Long day at work, you know? She didn't buy it. I could tell by the way she looked at me. There was a flicker of realization, as though she was piecing something together, but before she could say anything, I spoke again. Odessa, do you have any idea what just happened? I asked, keeping my voice steady, though I could feel the tension creeping in. Do you know what Caleb is doing? She frowned, looking confused. Caleb? What are you talking about? He's just being friendly. I shook my head. No, Odessa, it's not that simple. I paused, trying to find the right words. He's been touching you, and not in a way that's appropriate. He's trying to get too close, and I don't know if you've noticed, but it's more than just harmless office chatter. She stared at me, her lips slightly parted, unsure how to respond. It was like she was hearing me, but not really listening. James, she said slowly, you're being paranoid. Caleb's just a friend. He respects me, and I respect him. The words stung. The way she said just a friend made it sound so simple, like I was overthinking everything. But I knew what I had seen. I had seen the way Caleb's eyes lingered, how his touches were deliberate, how he always seemed to find an excuse to stand just a little too close to her. I'm not being paranoid, I said quietly, my voice low, almost a whisper. You don't get it. You didn't see what I saw. She was quiet for a long moment, her gaze shifting from me to the floor. Then, her voice, small and hesitant, broke the silence. James, are you saying you don't trust me? It was like a punch to the gut. I knew the accusation was coming, but hearing it out loud made it real. No, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I trust you, but I don't trust him. She didn't answer right away. She was looking down at her glass, swirling the wine, lost in thought. I could see the wheels turning in her head. Maybe she was starting to understand. Maybe she was starting to see Caleb the way I saw him. But before we could talk about it more, I noticed something. Caleb was walking toward us, and he was alone. My heart skipped a beat, and I felt my muscles tense up, my instinct telling me that this was not going to be good. Odessa noticed too. She straightened up and put her wine down on the table. James, just relax, she whispered, but her voice lacked the usual certainty. She wasn't sure what was coming either. Caleb stopped a few feet away from us, his eyes briefly flicking between us both. The casual, confident expression he usually wore was gone. Instead, there was something in his gaze now, a flicker of uncertainty. He had made his move, and he knew I had noticed. He knew I wasn't going to back down. "Odessa," he said, his voice smooth, but there was a tightness to it now. "Can we talk? I think we need to clear something up." His eyes shifted to me. "James, if you have a minute, we should speak privately." I couldn't help but laugh, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. It was the kind of laugh that bubbled up when I was pushed to my breaking point. "Oh, I'm sure we do," I said, keeping my tone even, though I could feel the anger rising in me again. Odessa glanced at me, then back at Caleb. There was hesitation in her eyes now. She was torn between the two of us, and I could feel her unease radiating off her. "I think it's time for you to leave, Caleb," I said, my voice much colder than I intended. "You've made your move, and I've seen enough." His smile faltered, and he took a step back. "You're making a mistake, James," he said, the challenge clear in his voice. "You don't know everything." "No," I replied, my gaze hardening. "But I know enough. And right now, I know you need to leave." Caleb hesitated, his lips curling into a tight, controlled smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're making a big mistake, James," he said, his voice low but sharp. "You don't know the whole picture." I didn't flinch. I wasn't interested in his game anymore. He'd pushed me too far, and now I was ready to see how far he would go. "Save it," I replied coldly. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "I know enough." I could feel Odessa's eyes on me, her expression a mixture of confusion and discomfort. She wasn't used to me being like this, standing my ground. She was probably wondering why I wasn't just letting it go. But how could I? How could I let him stand there, acting as if nothing had happened, as if I didn't see the way he was looking at her? Caleb's posture shifted, his stance growing more defensive. I could tell he was trying to figure out his next move, but I wasn't going to let him dictate the terms of this conversation. "I think it's time for you to leave," I said again, my voice firm, cutting through the tension between us like a knife. Odessa, her face now pale, stepped forward, trying to defuse the situation. "James, stop. Caleb, can we just talk about this? Let's just—" "No," I interrupted her, my eyes never leaving Caleb. "There's nothing to talk about anymore." Caleb seemed to weigh his options, his jaw clenched, but I could see the anger behind his eyes. He had clearly underestimated me, thinking I would back down, thinking I wouldn't notice what he was doing. He'd learned the hard way that I wasn't going to let this slide. He looked at Odessa once more, his gaze lingering for just a second longer than necessary. It was almost like he was trying to read her, see if she would defend him, if she would choose him over me. But she didn't. She just stood there, her lips parted, unsure of what to say. Finally, Caleb took a deep breath and, with a forced smile, nodded. "Fine," he said, "but don't think this is over." He turned on his heel, walking away without another word. As soon as he was out of sight, Odessa turned to me, her eyes wide with a mix of confusion and something else. Was it fear? Regret? "James, what's going on?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you do that? What's happening between you and Caleb?" I didn't know how to answer her. The words were stuck in my throat. The truth was, I had no idea how deep Caleb's feelings went, or if they even were feelings. Maybe it was just a power move. But whatever it was, I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't pretend like everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. "Odessa," I said, my voice softer now, "you didn't see it. You didn't see how he was acting with you. He wasn't just being friendly. He was making a play, and I couldn't just let that slide." She took a step back, her face still unreadable. "I don't know what you want me to say," she replied, her voice shaking slightly. "I don't, James. I'm not even sure what you're accusing me of." "I'm not accusing you of anything," I said quickly, my frustration bubbling up again. "I'm just telling you what I saw. Caleb didn't care about work. He was looking at you like you were something to be taken." Her face paled further, and for the first time, I saw something in her eyes, something that made my stomach drop. Was it guilt? Had she noticed, even if just for a moment? But before I could ask, she took a deep breath and shook her head. "This isn't us, James," she said, her voice low. "This isn't who we are." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust her. But the doubt was creeping in, and I couldn't shake it. I couldn't unsee what had happened. The air between us felt heavy, suffocating. Odessa stood there, her expression torn, her gaze shifting back and forth between me and the empty space where Caleb had just been. I could see the gears turning in her head, but nothing she said seemed to reach me. My mind was clouded with the image of Caleb, his hand on her back, the way he had stood just a little too close, like he had some claim to her. I took a step back, trying to control the rising tension in my chest. "Odessa," I said, my voice hoarse but steady. "I know what I saw. I'm not crazy, and I'm not making this up." She opened her mouth to speak, but hesitated, her eyes flickering nervously. "James, I didn't," she started, but I cut her off. "I know you didn't," I said quickly, almost too quickly, too harshly. "But he did. And now it's out there. I can't just ignore it." She shook her head, as if trying to shake off the weight of everything that had just happened. "I didn't even notice anything was wrong," she admitted, her voice quiet. "I thought it was just normal, him being friendly. You know how he is. He's always been like that." I wanted to scream, to shake her, to make her see how wrong that was. But instead, I forced myself to breathe. "No, it's not just being friendly, Odessa. It's something else. It's a game, and he's playing it on his terms." She stared at me, and for the first time, I saw a crack in her composure. Was it guilt? Or maybe confusion? Maybe both. But what unsettled me the most was the look she gave me. It was almost as if she wasn't entirely sure who was in the wrong anymore. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "I never thought you'd react like this. I didn't think he was crossing any boundaries." The doubt in her voice hit me harder than I expected. She didn't see it. She couldn't see it, or maybe she didn't want to. But I saw it. I saw it all. Every look, every touch that wasn't accidental, every moment when he thought I wasn't paying attention. "How can you not see it?" I said, my voice cracking, the frustration spilling out. "How can you not see that he's been crossing lines, that he's been testing me?" Odessa stepped back, her hand moving to her forehead as if she was trying to process everything. "James, I don't know what you want me to say. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't encourage him. I didn't know what to say either." I wasn't angry with her, not really. I was angry at myself, angry at Caleb, but most of all, angry at the situation. This wasn't supposed to happen. She wasn't supposed to be the target of some office flirtation. This was supposed to be my world, our world. But now it felt like someone else had taken a piece of it, without either of us realizing. "Odessa, I need to know where I stand with you," I said quietly, the words more vulnerable than I wanted them to be. "I need to know that you see this, that you understand what's happening." She looked at me, and for a long time, there was nothing but silence. Her eyes searched mine, and I could feel the weight of her indecision pressing down on both of us. Finally, she spoke, her voice softer now. "I don't know what's going on between you and Caleb, but I do know this. I love you, James. You're the one I chose." It wasn't enough. The words should have been comforting, but they felt empty. I needed more. I needed her to see the truth of what was happening, to understand how much I was struggling with this. But as we stood there, facing each other, I realized something. Maybe she couldn't see it. Maybe I was the only one who could. And maybe that was the hardest part of all. I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. Her words, "I love you, James. You're the one I chose," hung in the air like a promise, but it felt hollow. Love wasn't enough when it felt like something was being torn apart in front of me. It wasn't enough when I could see Caleb's shadow in the corner of every room, his lingering gaze, his calculated proximity. "Odessa, love doesn't fix everything," I finally said, my voice more strained than I intended. "And right now, I don't know if I can believe you when you say you don't see it. Maybe it's easier for you to ignore what's happening, but it's real, and it's making me question everything." Her face twisted in frustration, and I could tell she wasn't ready for this. "You're making this sound like it's something more than it is," she snapped. "Caleb is just a colleague, a friend. You're the one turning this into something else." I felt a bitter laugh rise in my chest, but I held it back. "How can I not turn it into something else? You're telling me it's nothing when I saw it with my own eyes. You don't even realize how close you are to something that's not just harmless friendship." She looked away, her eyes scanning the room as though searching for something. Maybe an escape from the conversation. Maybe a way to make everything go back to normal. But I knew, deep down, it wasn't going to be that easy. "I need to go talk to him," I said suddenly, the words leaving my mouth before I even had time to think about them. "What?" Odessa's head snapped back to me, her voice sharp with panic. "No, James. Don't do this. I have to. I replied firmly, though I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I need him to understand that this is not a game. He doesn't get to touch what's mine, and I need to make sure he knows it. Her eyes widened. You can't just go up to him and make a scene. That's not who you are. I'm not just going to stand by anymore, I said, my voice low and steady. I've been quiet. I've been patient, but not anymore. I turned to walk away, the anger and frustration fueling each step I took. But as I approached the crowd, my heart pounded harder in my chest. I could hear my breath coming faster, the weight of what I was about to do sinking in. I saw Caleb talking to a group of people by the bar, laughing too loud, his hand resting casually on the shoulder of a woman standing next to him. The sight of it made my blood boil. He was acting like everything was fine, like nothing had happened, like there was no consequence for his actions. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, and walked over. The air felt colder now, and it seemed like the world had gone silent. As I approached, Caleb noticed me. His eyes flicked to mine, and for a split second, I saw something in his gaze that I hadn't expected: fear. He knew I was coming for him. James, he said, his voice smooth but his posture stiffening. Didn't expect to see you here. I didn't reply. Instead, I stepped closer, standing just a few inches away from him. I could feel the tension in the air now, thick and suffocating. I need you to understand something, Caleb, I said quietly, my voice controlled, but every word carrying the weight of a warning. This stops now. No more games. No more touching. No more lingering around my wife. I'm done letting you play this little game. Caleb blinked, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if trying to measure me, trying to gauge my seriousness. But I wasn't backing down. I don't know what you think this is, he said, his voice cool, though I could hear the strain beneath the surface. But you're overreacting. Odessa and I. No. I interrupted, my voice sharper now. It's not just you and Odessa. It's me. And you don't get to walk all over me, Caleb. His jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes, resentment, maybe, or recognition that I wasn't going to let him get away with this. He took a step back, his expression hardening. I think you're misjudging the situation, James, he said, his tone dangerously calm. But if you want to make this about power, fine. But don't think you're the only one who can play the game. I took a step closer, closing the gap between us, and I could see the tension in his body. He was trying to play it cool, but I could see the edge of uncertainty now. This is about respect, Caleb, I said quietly, and you've lost mine. Without waiting for his response, I turned on my heel and walked away. The room around me felt alive, buzzing with energy, but I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. The stakes were higher now. There was no going back. As I walked back toward Odessa, I could feel her eyes on me. I didn't know if I had made the right move. I didn't know if things would ever go back to the way they were. But I was done waiting for someone else to make a move. The game had shifted, and I was in control now. I walked back to Odessa, my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't sure what to expect, whether she would still be angry, confused, or maybe even distant. But the moment I saw her, I knew I had to make this right, not just with her, but with myself. The tension in the air between us felt like it could snap at any moment, but I had already taken control of the situation. Now, I needed to own it. She was standing by the window, her arms crossed over her chest. Her face was hard to read. I could see the worry, the uncertainty, but there was something else too. A realization, maybe. The kind that comes when you can no longer pretend everything is fine. James, she said softly, but there was something different in her voice now. I don't know what to say. I didn't think you'd go this far. I took a deep breath, my voice calm but firm. I don't care what you thought, Odessa. This isn't about you not seeing it. It's about respect, about understanding where the boundaries are. She was quiet for a moment, staring at me. Then, as if a weight had lifted, she nodded slowly. I know, James. I know. I didn't realize how wrong it was until you said it like that. I was too caught up in everything, too naive to see what was really going on. But maybe you're right. Maybe I missed the signs. It was the first time she admitted it, and it felt like a small victory for me. A weight I didn't even realize I was carrying had started to lift. But just as I thought this moment might end on a peaceful note, there was a shift in her expression. She paused, her eyes darkening slightly. Caleb came to find me after you left, she said, her voice a little colder. He wanted to explain himself, to tell me that it was all just harmless flirting, nothing more. I could feel the anger stirring again, but I held it in check. And Odessa's gaze flickered to the ground, and when she met my eyes again, I saw the truth. The guilt. The recognition that she had crossed a line, even if she hadn't fully understood it until now. I told him it wasn't okay, that I had to make a choice. I stepped closer, my eyes not leaving hers. And what did you choose, Odessa? She hesitated, and for a moment, I feared she was going to say something that would undo everything. But then she exhaled deeply, her shoulders sagging. I chose you, James. I made a mistake, and I'll own up to it. I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't perfect, nothing would ever be after everything that had happened, but it was something. It was enough for now. But just as I was about to say something, I saw Caleb in the distance, walking across the room with a smug expression. The moment his eyes met mine, there was a flicker of something, maybe guilt, maybe annoyance, before he turned and walked toward the exit. In that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about me standing up for myself. It was about the game he thought he was playing. The manipulation, the charm. He thought he could get away with it. But he didn't. He lost. As he walked away, I saw him glance back at me once more, his expression now one of defeat. The power he thought he had, gone. And that felt like the sweetest victory of all. Let's go home, I said to Odessa, my voice calmer now, but firm. It's over. She nodded, still unsure, but her eyes softened. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. We left the party quietly, no grand gestures, no dramatic scenes. The damage had been done, but we were walking away from it. Together. The ride home was quiet, but it was different now. I didn't know what would happen between us from here on out. Trust would take time to rebuild, but at least I knew one thing. I had won. Not because I had confronted her or won over Caleb, but because I had taken control of my own life. I had taken a stand, not for the sake of being right, but because I deserved respect. As the door closed behind us that night, I realized something crucial. Sometimes, the hardest part of a fight is knowing when to stand your ground. But in the end, it was always worth it. And as for Odessa, well, karma had a way of catching up. I didn't need to say another word. The consequences of her actions would find their way to her in time. I had seen enough to know that she wasn't the person I thought she was, and she'd have to deal with that reality sooner or later. But for now, I was free. Free from the lies, the uncertainty, and the feeling of being invisible. Free to rebuild the trust in myself, if not with her. And that was enough.